In a harbor on the west coast of Europe, a shabbily dressed man lies dozing in his fishing boat. A smartly dressed tourist is just putting a new roll of color film into his camera to photograph the idyllic picture. Blue sky, green sea with peaceful snowy whitecaps, black boat, red woolen fisherman's cap. Click once more. Click. And since all good things come in threes, it's better to be safe than sorry a third time. Click. The snapping, almost hostile sound awakens the dozing fisherman, who sleepily sits up, sleepily gropes for his cigarettes, but before he has found what he is looking for, the eager tourist is already holding up a pack under his nose. Not exactly sticking a cigarette between his lips, but putting one to his hand, and a fourth click, that of a lighter, completes the over-eager courtesy. As a result of that excess of nimble courtesy, scarcely measurable, never verifiable, a certain awkwardness has risen that the tourist, who speaks the language of the country, tries to bridge by striking up a conversation. "You'll have a good catch today." The fisherman shakes his head. "But I've been told the weather's favorable." The fisherman nods. "So you won't put to sea?" The fisherman shakes his head. The tourist grows more and more uncomfortable. It is clear that he has the welfare of this shabbily dressed man at heart, and that disappointment over the lost opportunity is gnawing at him. "Oh, I'm sorry. Aren't you feeling well?" At last the fisherman switches from a sign language to the spoken word. "I feel fine. I've never felt better." He stands up and stretches as if to demonstrate his athletic build. "I feel terrific." The tourist's expression grows steadily more unhappy, and he can no longer suppress the question which, as it were, threatens to burst his heart. "But why? Then do you not put to sea?" The answer comes promptly and briefly. "Because I already put to sea this morning." "Did you make a good catch?" "My catch was so good that I need not put to sea for a second time. I had 4 lobsters in my baskets. Nearly caught 2 dozen mackerel." The fisherman, finally awake, is now thawing and slaps the tourist soothingly on the shoulder. The worried countenance of the latter seems to him an expression of inappropriate yet touching anxiety. "I've enough even for tomorrow and the day after tomorrow," he says to relieve the stranger's soul. "Do you want a cigarette?" "Yes, please." Cigarettes are being put into mouths. A fifth click. The stranger, shaking his head, sits down on the rim of the bore and puts down the camera. For now he needs to give both hands to give his speech emphasis. "I do not want to meddle in your personal affairs," he says. "But just imagine, if you put to sea today for a second, a third, or perhaps even a fourth time, and you catch 3, 4, 5, maybe even 10 dozen mackerel. Just imagine that." The fisherman nods. "You put to sea," continues the tourist, "not only today, but tomorrow and the day after tomorrow. Indeed, on every favorable day, 2, 3, or perhaps even 4 times. Do you know what would happen?" The fisherman shakes his head. "In 1 year at the latest, you would be able to buy a motor. In 2 years, a second boat. In 3 or 4, you may perhaps have a small trawler. With 2 boats or the trawler, you would of course catch a lot more. One day you would have 2 trawlers. You would..." For a few moments, his enthusiasm leaves him speechless. "You would build a small cold store, perhaps a smokehouse. Soon afterward, a marinating factory. Fly around with your own helicopter, making out the shoals of fish, giving orders to your trawlers by radio. You could buy the fishing right for salmon, open a fish restaurant, export lobster directly to Paris without a middleman," and then, once again, his enthusiasm leaves him speechless. Shaking his head, saddened in the depth of his heart, almost bereft of this holiday delight, He looks into the waters, rolling peacefully into the harbor where the uncaught fish jump merrily. And then he says, but again, his excitement leaves him speechless. The fisherman slaps him on the back, as one would slap a child choking over his food. What then? He asks in a low voice. Then, says the stranger with restrained enthusiasm. Then, without a care in the world, you could sit here in the harbor, doze in the sun, and look at the glorious sea. But I'm already doing that, says the fisherman. I sit here in the harbor without a care in the world and doze. It was only your clicking that disturbed me. And so the thus enlightened tourist walked pensively away. For at one time he had believed that he was working so as to someday not have to work anymore. There remained in him not a trace of pity for the fisherman in his shabby clothes, but only a little envy. That's called Anecdote to the Decline of Work Ethic. 1963, Heinrich Boll, apologies Mr. Boll if I'm saying your name wrong, wrote that as a piece for a Labor Day celebration. And you may have heard it before as a Mexican fisherman with a Harvard MBA or any kind of other litany ways of the story. But it's so incredibly on my mind all the time. All the time. I want to share with you a little story of me experiencing the fisherman myself. So years ago, I had checked the boxes appropriately. I had been wandering through life, getting my education, and I had an opportunity at a very fancy place, or so it was sold to me like that. You go and you work and you hob and you knob, and one day we went to a younger person's lunch. Let's get the younger workers to interact with our new potentials, you know? And they'll go to lunch and they'll bond and they'll see, well, the young people here, they really like working here. So the people coming up after them, well, they want to work here too, right? And not by any intentionality. We just kind of casually open up, right? And they ask us, well, do you have any questions for us? And again, with zero intentionality, I don't know why it was inspired to ask this, but I ask it in every single interview when I'm looking at anything perspective for work. I ask them, what do you do for fun? And it was later in the lunch. We had been interacting for quite some time through the course of this work that we've been doing. And so people, you know, I thought the guard was a little bit down. After all, that was the intention of this lunch, right? We're going to get the young people together, younger people together. And we're going to break down those walls and show them that we're the real place, right? And everyone gave their same guarded answers. You know, that's the weekend. That's for laundry and chores. And sometimes, if I'm lucky, I watch Netflix. You know, but you know, it's you hear it, right? And we're going around, and I will always remember there was a guy who said that he loved fishing, but he didn't get to do it that often. In fact, he had bought this big fancy pole, of which I had no understanding. I've never fished or anything like that, but to me it seemed expensive. He bought it with his money at his fancy job, right? And except he hadn't been able to use it. He said that it's still wrapped in the plastic. It's sitting in the closet. And he bought the pole last year. And that struck me in the heart. I knew in that exact moment I would never, ever, ever make any further attempt to work there, ever. And I don't know if there was any intentionality in his honesty or if his soul cried out the same way mine did to exactly what he loved and what was stopping him from doing it. But he had gotten to the point where he could afford this nice thing that he wanted, and it sat there collecting dust. And I didn't even think of the story, the anecdote, the work ethic or anything like that. I didn't think about the Mexican fisherman and the Harvard MBA. All I could think about is how I absolutely would never want that to happen to me. And so we reached the whole point of this video. First, I wanted to share that fun little question that you should be dropping in all your little pursuits, you know? Hey, what do you guys do for fun? And if they're left flat-footed, struggling for an answer, a little bit of honesty comes out when you really need it most. But secondly, I hope that you've reflected on whether or not your love is wrapped in plastic. Is it sitting in the closet collecting dust? Are all of your efforts for something that you could have had in the first place? And that's not to be unrealistic by any means. But I do think that realism can also be a trap. Oh, it just doesn't work like that. Well, that's what the tourists thought, right? That was the kind of mindset that they were stuck in. Maybe it does work like that. Maybe you just have to find out what it is that you have, that you want. Maybe asking these questions could be what gets you there. Hope it does. You guys have any experiences along these lines? I'd love to hear about them, how you escaped, or maybe what you're dealing with now. Regardless, I hope this has helped you. I hope you've had fun. And I hope that someone's kind to you in a way that you can pay forward today.